Hello, and in this particular activity, we're going to be looking at rock, paper, scissors um, and writing some code in Python, but also doing some data science with it. And so data science is the ability to take maybe um, large numbers or a large number of data and be able to explore that data and do some things with it. And so that's what we're going to be doing in this particular workshop. So for just context, to so everybody has an understanding, we have rock paper scissors, and so rock paper scissors is a nice schoolyard game that can be used for decision making. Who's going to be first in line or these type of ideas. But the idea is that there's no guarantee that you can win because there is some randomization. So if you and someone are playing against each other, there's always the sort of the circle of who can beat or which item can beat which item. So we have that scissor can beats paper, and paper beats rock, and then rock beats scissors. And so it's sort of this circle of not knowing which one can win. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to write a computer program that will pick a random rock, paper, scissors, and then we, as the human, can sort of play against it and see, who can win. But the next level that I want to do with this is actually see if the computer, if it plays rock, paper, scissors 50 times, 100 times, does it have an equal amount of rock, paper, or scissors in terms of that randomizing of it? And so what we're going to do, so this is, we've got our computer over here. We're going to write a computer program on our computer, and then where you can play against it, just like this little guy is doing. So he's throwing down a paper, and so we'll have to write a computer program to see what our computer will throw down. So the website that we're going to be using today is Callisto, and so it's a great little website to support getting started with data science in your classroom. And so they have a whole bunch of resources here in terms of getting started with for teachers and bunch of resources here. And what we're going to be doing is going over to the hub, and so that hub is where you will log in to your account or first create an account, and then you'll have something that looks like this. So where your files will be located. And so we're going to go ahead and create a new Python file. And then there we are. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully that is good. And so we're going to write, and so again, we're going to be writing this in Python, and so we'll learn a little bit of syntax as we go through. So Python is a text-based language, and so we need to write in the language of Python for the computer to understand. And so first of all, if we use this number sign, that's a comment, and so we're allowed to write in plain English. And so I like to write in plain English what we're going to be writing about. And so this particular project is going to be a rock, paper, scissors project. And then the next thing we need to do is Python knows certain commands that we're going to be using. For example, if we go back to what we're referring to, so rock, paper, scissors, we have these three items that we're going to be able to choose from. And so what we can do is we can have a list, or what we call in computer programming, a variable that is an array. And so an array allows you to have multiple things in there. And so we're going to have an array of the words rock, paper, and scissors. So couple things that you might be wondering about here is, so this is called a string. And so if I just put a comment here, so with those comments, those are strings, and they're characters essentially. And so we have a list of strings that are rock, paper, scissors in this example. So we want to then pick from this list a random piece or a random item. All right. And so to get randomness, we need to teach the computer about random. And so the way to do that is we need to import the library that is random. And actually, we're going to be using something called random, but there's a sort of sub chapter, let's say, called choice. And so just like we would go to a library and pick a book out to learn about something, well, Python only knows a certain amount, and what we are going to do is using this line 1, we're going to say from this random book, we're going to import the chapter based on choice. All right? And so I can run this. I can see what will happen. So if I just click on run, and it will just run this, and you'll see here this like run cell. And so it just runs that particular cell. And so we can have like little sub programs going on here. Now, you'll see that nothing really happened because all we've said is from random import choice, and then we've created this. So our next line now is we're going to have the computer pick something. And so that we're going to have it say choice and then items. And then what we want to do, so this line here is going to randomly pick, it's going to pick from that list called items. And then what we want to do is have it display onto the computer screen. And so we use a print option. So we're going to say print computer. And so this will display the item that is picked. So now if I run, we'll see rock. Great. So if I run it again, oh, I've got to click on this one to make sure it's selected and then run it. So we got paper and paper, rock, rock, paper, rock, paper, paper, rock. There's no scissors. I'm like super surprised that there's no scissors that have come up. That's really weird. There it is. I knew it would come up eventually. And so that's sort of the, so there's couple little things there. So you can see how, just running it a few times, we're only seeing a few of them. And so eventually, if we run this a lot of times, well, maybe we'll see that there will be a sort of even distribution of it. And so that's sort of the idea of this particular project, is that we want to see if I run this 10 times or 50 times or 1,000 times, how many rocks, how many papers, and how many scissors am I going to get? So let's go ahead and start that. And so what I need to do is a way to keep track of how many rocks, how many papers, and how many scissors. So that, again, I'm going to use a variable. So I'm going to have a rock, and I'm just going to make it equal to 0. Same with paper. So these variables are going to help us to keep track of the number of those particular items. All right. So I'm just going to write variable to keep track of the specific items. All right. And so now what we want to do is we want to have the computer pick a bunch of times. And so, and based on that picking of the bunch of times, we want to then associate it with that, if it picks rock, well, we're going to want it to make rock add 1. And then if it picks paper, paper adds 1, and scissors, scissors add 1. So there's a couple things we need to do. Number 1 is we want to have something that happens a bunch of times. So we're going to need a loop. And in this case, we're going to use what's called a for loop. And so a for loop that we can use here is so for x in range, and then this number range is how many times it will go through this loop. And so for those of you, and then we need to have that semicolon. So for those of you that might have explored with like a repeat loop, and so this will repeat 10 times. So now that we've got that, we're going to have our computer make that choice again. So we want it to pick from that list items. And now what we want to do is, so based on if it's rock, paper, or scissors, we want to add 1 to the respective one. So here we need to have an if statement. And so these if statements are conditions based on what comes out. And so here we have that if computer is equal to rock, and so there's 2 different equals here. So one, this double equal is we're comparing it. If 2 is equal to 2, then this will happen. And so this is doing a comparison, where in this case here, when these are single equals, this is assigning the value. So we're creating this sort of container called rock, and inside of it is going to be a number, and the number is 0. And the same here with the container paper and the container scissors. Here we have the container computer will be assigned, or will be given a random random word based on what was in this choice of the items, this list items. And then this is going to compare it. So if it's rock, we're going to tell it to make rock add 1 to rock. All right. And then we're going to do, so now that's our rock statement. Now we have to do the same thing for paper and for scissors. Now, when we have a series of these if statements, we can have an if else, or an elif. And so we're going to use this elif because we have another condition that could be met. And so we want to make sure that if it's equal to paper, I'm just going to make sure that we spell it right, then we want paper to go up. And then the last statement here is else. And so this else is like a catch-all. And so if rock gets pulled out of that list, if rock gets pulled out of this list, then the number of rocks will go up. If paper gets pulled out of the list, then the number of papers goes up. Well, the only thing left is scissors. And so if it's scissors, then we're going to make scissors go up. And so there we are, equals to scissors plus 1. So now what I want to do is I can run this, so I can run it, and I just see rock once because I only printed out the computer once here. So what I want to do is I'm going to do some printing down the bottom here, and I'm going to tell it to print rock and then scissors or paper. And the last one is scissors. So now if I run this, let's see what happens. So we've got this extra rock up top just because we have this here. So what I can do is I can just put a number sign in front of it. And so these number signs can be helpful because I don't want to remove this line because I can use it later on if I have a mistake, if there's an error in here. It's always useful to have that. So if I run this, we now have 1 rock, 6 paper, and 3 scissors. And so if I run this again, oh, I got to click on that. Run it again. So 4, 4, and 2, 3, 4, 3. So you can see how when I run this, I'm getting some different numbers. And so if I run this, let's say not 10, but 100, let's see what happens. So they're in the 30, and like 33 would be what we would expect, right? Approximately 33. What would happen if we would put in 500? There we are. So we can see that we're starting to get this sort of this balance of them. But what I would rather do instead of have a just, I can output the numbers, which is great, but it's nice to actually see the numbers as well. So we can start to graph this as maybe a bar graph. And so what we're going to be using is we're going to have to do another, again, Python doesn't know how to do a bar graph, but we can tell it to go get another library book that's called a matplotlib dot plot, sorry. And so here we are. So this is the I'll put this below if you want. But yeah, so this is the code to bring in that plotting ability. And then what we want to do is we want to make a figure. All right, so just like we're telling it to make a graph, so we can say a figure or graph is going to be equal to, so there's a function that we need that we're going to tell it to create a plot graph. And then, so we're going to say on the first axis is going to be based on the graph that we have here. And so we need to add these axes. We just got to make sure that so we've got round brackets and then square bracket. And then in here we have 0, comma 0, comma 1, comma 1. And then we need to, we're going to bring in our, we're going to create another little list, but this list now is going to be based on what we have here. And so those total amounts are going to be based on our number of rocks, paper, and scissors. And then I'm going to apply those, what we have here, rock, paper, scissors. I'm going to apply that to the to our bar graph. So the x-axis will be the rock, paper, scissors, and then the y-axis will be those numbers here. So I'm just going to put that in here. So it's we got items. So again, the items is the list that tells us what each one of them are, and then this total, this total is going to plot them or tell us where to put them, and then this final one is going to tell us to show it. So what I'm going to do here is write a little bit of comments so this is for us to create the bar graph, and this is sort of the setup of the axes. This is to grab the amounts and put them into the list total. And then this will actually plot those values based on the items. And then this one will display the graph. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. So now we have 168, 166, and 166. And so if we go down here, we'll actually see that we have a bar graph of those. And you can see they're very similar in that sense. And so if I change this to, let's say, 10,000. Okay, so let's run this and see what we get. So we now have 3,339 and etc. And then we can see what those will look like. And so it seems, you can see how with some exploring with some data science, you can take a very fun rock paper scissors game, and you can take this and run it a few times, because you and I as humans, we would not be able to play 10,000 games of rock paper scissors and see what sort of randomness we would come up with in a couple seconds. As you can see, we did 10,000, or if I wanted to do 100,000, let's run that, see what happens. There you go. So 100,000 is very quick, and still you can see they're pretty even in there. So there it is in terms of what we have. Hopefully you enjoyed what you saw here, and thinking about extensions, thinking about opportunities with this. Are you able to add other things to our rock paper scissors lizard Spock? What if we didn't just have rock paper scissors in here, and we had an extra scissors? So we sort of didn't have an even weight, because right now we have an even weight of rock paper scissors. There's only one of each of them. What if we had more of them in here, and that way when you're picking out that random choice, maybe something is going to be skewed or biased in there, and so that would be interesting to see what would happen to your numbers and how your graph would be affected. All right, so again, thanks very much for watching. Before we close out, we want to make sure that we're going to save our items, because it doesn't automatically save. It does say that it auto-saved here, but we want to make sure that after each time, or just before we close, we want to make sure we save it. And then we can also change the name of it, so we can have the name of the notebook here. So we're going to say this is rock, paper, scissors, data science. And there we are. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to reach out. If not, thanks for watching, and happy coding. Bye for now.